All right, Net Lease TV 101A. In this episode, we're going to be discussing lease extensions, okay? Why would a landlord want to explore a lease extension? Well, let's say you own a 7-Eleven or a Walgreens, a CVS. You have like 2.5 to 3 years remaining on your primary lease term with 2 5-year options. You may want to go to your tenant, especially if you have a loan maturing, and you go to your tenant and see if you could get a lease extension. One, it's going to make your property much more financeable, right? Much more financeable. And two, it's going to make it much more valuable, because once you get the lease extension, the cap rate will probably go down if you were to market that property for sale. So we're going to analyze that. And if you need consulting in this process, definitely call me. But we'll get into that later. All right, who would want to do a lease extension? Who want do lease extension? Question mark, right? If you're a buyer, you ought to explore this. You may be able to put the property under contract, and while you're under contract, go back to the tenant and see if you can get a lease extension before you close or whatever. Or right after you close. So your value is going to be much higher. Possibly the seller hasn't thought of that. I don't know. Two, you're looking for a loan. You're looking to get a loan. You're buying the property, or you're refinancing the property. It's going to make the property much more financeable if you get a lease extension, okay? So if you're buying or you're refinancing or cashing out, you may want to look into the lease extension. I think those would be the two circumstances of who would want to do the lease extension. All right, so now here's our newsletter. So I'm going to go ahead and go through our case study, and we're just going to say 7-Eleven, right? Okay, we're going to use 7-Eleven as an example. And again, the primary lease term has 2.5 years remaining. The rent per month is $13,000, so that would extrapolate out to $156,000 annually. Okay, so our NOI equals right around $156,000, and that's currently, okay, with the 2.5 years, we've got 2.5 years remaining, okay? So if you take our NOI and you divide that by 5.5 cap, that gets us a value of $2,836,363.04. Okay, that's our value with an NOI of 156 divided by our 5.5 cap. We get this value. Okay, so now what we need to solve for is we want to solve if we get this extended. So we have 2 5-year options. So if we get this extended and we get the tenant, 7-Eleven, to exercise the 2 5-year options early, now we'll have 12.5 years, right? We're going to have 12.5 years instead of 2.5. So if the loan's maturing, this is going to make it much more financeable, right? And more valuable, because with 2.5 years remaining, our cap rate's going to be 5.5. With 12.5, it may be like 4 3/4, okay? So you may be able to get a 4 3/4 cap. You get a much better cap rate. So we want to find out now where we have parity, okay? And what I mean by that, we want to see our value with 2.5 years remaining and our value with 12.5 years remaining, and see where those are equal. So we're going to do some algebra to figure that out, and we'll do that right now. All right, so now we're going to start the algebra. For all you algebra nerds, we're going to get this going here. So enjoy this, all right? Here we go. with the 2.5 years remaining, right? 2.5 years remaining, we've got a rent of $156. Okay, $156 even. All right, and at that, we're getting a 5.5 cap, right? That's what probably this property would sell in the open market. Now, what we're trying to do is find the parity in value, okay? And we're trying to solve for the rent. Once we find out where these two values are equal, we can go back to the tenant and raise the rent a little bit above that. Okay, so we'll know on the new rent, we'll have a slightly higher value because our cap rate over here, we'll have now 12.5 years remaining. We'll have a lower cap rate, right? We're gonna have a lower cap rate because the value is gonna be worth more and it's gonna be more financeable. Okay, so again, what are we solving for? R, okay? And we know with 12.5 years remaining, we probably have a much lower cap rate, something like 4 3/4 for 7-Eleven credit right now because it's A-rated credit. So you'd have a much lower cap rate than before when you only had 2.5. Now you've got 12.5. So if you have a loan maturing also, this is gonna be good for the lender because they're gonna know that you're gonna lock in for another 12.5 years. All right, over here at 2.5, at the end there, the tenant could say, hey, we're moving out, or you know, we're gonna extend, but you really don't know. So to take some ambiguity out of that, you may want to do the early lease extension. So let's do that algebra again. So first thing we want to do, 156 divided by the 5.5%. Okay, that gives us the value $2,836,363. 64. Okay, so we got that. Mark that off. And let's bring this down, this R and the 4 3/4. R 4.75. Again, this 4.75 is the new cap rate because we think that we're going to get a lower cap rate with a 12.5 year remaining lease once we do the extension. Okay, now there's caveats to that. It depends on the sales of the location, the environmental, the location, whatever it may be. So there are caveats to this. So now what we want to do now is take this 4.75 to get rid of it and solve for R. On this side, we want to multiply. And then 4.75 over here against the 2,836,363.64. That's going to negate this. And our R, the new rent that we're looking for to have the parity is, okay, 134,727.27. Okay, so now when we go to get the lease extension, are we going to ask for this? No, because then we'll have the same value that we previously had. But this is kind of like where we're equal, so we want to go up. So what we may want to do is say, okay, we want to discount the rent from this 156 by 10%. Okay, so that would be what, 15,600? So 15,600 off that 156. So that would be, let me do that quick math here, 00404. So our rent would become 140,400 if I figured this right. And so then what we can do now is, do you have a calculator? Take 144 divided by 4 3/4, and what's our new value? So we're going to take this 4 3/4. Hopefully you can see this. So 144 divided by 4 3/4. That gave us 2,956,000 approximately. So 2,956,000, okay? And is that greater than 2,836,363? Yes, it is. So again, we're not saying that when you go back to the tenant that you want to offer a rent of 134,727. That's just kind of like where you break even. What we're saying is, where is that? And you probably only want to come down like 10%. But because you've got the lease extension, your cap rate's going to probably go down from the original like 5.5 to 4 3/4. So the property's, even though you're giving a rent concession, the property's more valuable now and more financeable. So I hope you enjoyed this, like this, click on the bell, subscribe to Net Lease TV, and we'll talk to you soon. If you have any questions, comment below. Thanks again.